Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tania and I'm a first year nurse practitioner student. So for today's video, I thought I would do a review of my first year courses as a full-time student in the NP program, starting from the fall, winter, and then finally ending with the spring semester. As a full-time student, in the fall semester, I took 4 courses. The first one being theory, second one being AHAD or Advanced Health Assessment and Diagnosis, third one Patho or Pathophysiology, and the fourth one was Roles and Responsibilities. So the first one that I mentioned was theory, and this is a master's course. This is because the NP program in Ontario is both combined with a master's degree and a nurse practitioner diploma at the end when you graduate. So you do have to take some master's courses. So in the fall semester, I only took one, which was the theory course. So the theory course basically is what it sounds like. It's all about nursing theories, how to write essays, kind of getting you into the mindset or the mind frame of writing an essay or a thesis proposal that you would do as a master's student. There were no required textbooks in this class, but there were required readings. So the readings were given by the prof in advance. They were usually articles, so you can go through it, and there was always Google. So I didn't buy any books for this class, if anyone's wondering. So the next 3 classes are related to the nurse practitioner program. The first one being roles and responsibilities. So what is the role of the NP and what are their responsibilities? So this class was basically based on the nurse practitioner standard of the CNO or the College Nurses of Ontario. And some topics that we looked at were RNs versus NPs and NPs versus family doctors. What are the similarities between the roles and what are the differences? So an example that I can give you guys is that a nurse practitioner in Ontario can legally admit and discharge patients from a hospital. But if the nurse practitioner or their workplace where they work doesn't allow NPs to admit or discharge patients, then they can't. That responsibility will fall on the doctor. So we discussed different topics like that, the overlaps of NP and family doctors, the different workplaces NPs can work at. There was one book that was required text and the rest was basically based, as I said, on the practice standard of the CNO. So the next class is Advanced Healthcare Assessment and Diagnosis, or lovingly known as AHAD. Now this is probably the hardest class I took this semester, and it actually spills into the winter semester, but I'll stick with the fall semester. So here it's basically what the name says, how you assess and how you would diagnose a patient. And I think we have a similar class in undergrad, but this takes it one step further. This is basically triaging the patient and then figuring out what is wrong with them. You are the one that's basically responsible for the diagnosis. And I say you as a future NP or as an NP. So basically you have a patient that presents to you, let's say with abdominal pain. So it's up to you to rule out all the red flags, which is the major things that are going on. If it's a ruptured spleen, who knows, all the way down to gases or something like that. So you have to know what to look for, what diagnostic tests you're going to send them for, any lab work, any referrals, and based on that, are you going to make a diagnosis? Is it appropriate to diagnose the patient at that moment, or do they need a workup? So basically, this whole class was about that. And I think it was really challenging this time because all our classes were online, it's on Zoom, so it was super hard to kind of assess a patient. Not that we did assess actual patients on Zoom, but kind of to think about it. We would just present case studies. Oh, the patient presents with headaches for the past 2 weeks. they're new, this person is 64 years old, female, kind of things like that, case studies, and we would have to assess over Zoom. Which, I mean, it worked up to a certain point, but after a while it was very difficult, at least in my opinion. As an NP, you're allowed to send patients for x-rays and ultrasounds, although MRIs and CTs we still can't, but I think Ontario will be changing that soon. You have to know your labs, what labs will you order or what labs not to order. Referrals, you can refer to specialists if you think it's beyond your scope of practice. So all of these things are covered in AHAD, but it's a lot, because it was basically one topic every class. So it would be dermatology, the next class cardio, the next GI, then peds, then mental health. And within those classes, you had different topics. So mental health, of course, is schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, all these things that you had to learn basically in 1 week and then move on to the next topic. So it was really, really challenging. I managed to pass, thank God, but I still need to review over the summer. For this class, one book was recommended, which I did get, and it helped a lot, but we also used many other resources. We used a lot of guidelines. So diabetes guidelines, Canadian hypertension guidelines, dyslipidemia guidelines, and all of that is for free online. We also used a lot of databases. One of them that was really popular was Up to Date. I think if you get Up to Date as a student, it's cheaper. I personally don't have it, but I think I'm gonna get it for next year. My final class for the fall semester was Pathophysiology. Now this class was also a lot of work, but I found it to be more straightforward versus AHAD. And what helped is that the teachers would post pre-recorded lectures on the website along with PowerPoint, so you could browse it about a week before class started, and whatever they didn't cover in the recordings, they would cover in class. So there were kind of two parts to it, just because there was a lot to cover in Patho. There was one required book that I got, which is an online version, and I also got a physical study guide. And this is related to the book that they wanted us to get. It's the study guide, Pathophysiology, and in here it goes through different questions. There are short answers, and although the midterm and the final are not short answers, it's all multiple choice, but I found this book to be really helpful to go through the topics, to make you think, and it actually helped you to answer the midterm and the final questions. For the winter semester, I had 3 classes, and these 3 classes were the same as the fall semester, but it was basically the continuation of them. So I continued on with roles and responsibilities, AHAD, Advanced Healthcare and Assessment and Diagnosis Part 2, and Pathophysiology Part 2. So the textbooks were the same, teachers were the same, and students were the same. Just different topics, because as I mentioned before, these classes were huge, or the material covered in them was a lot. And this brings me to the final semester, my spring/summer semester that I just finished. So in this semester, it's only 2 classes, and they are master's classes. So the first one was research, and the second one was statistics. For my research class, it was a combination of master's and NP students. And for this class, they were teaching you how to write a thesis proposal as a master's student. So coming up with your research question, how are you going to recruit participants? What are the ethics of recruiting participants? What are the steps are you going to take to analyze your data, etc. So this was a pretty straightforward class. It was all online. We had Zoom classes about every other week and online modules that you could read at your own leisure. This class had 1 required textbook, which I got off a friend. It's pretty good. It goes through qualitative and quantitative research, because at the end you're going to have to write a mini thesis proposal, and you're going to have to pick, do I want to do a qualitative or quantitative research proposal? So this is basically what I used, and it's a pretty old version. There are new versions, but I mean, you really don't need to buy the newer version because everything, the basics, is all in the main book. And finally, I get to tell you about statistics, the joy of statistics. And I mean that very sarcastically, because this class absolutely killed me the last couple of weeks. So we had to download SPSS. It's a special software that analyzes graphs and data, because in the class, the teacher would give you data entry points, and you had to input that into SPSS, and it would just spit out graphs and charts, and you basically had to interpret that into a Word document and submit it as an assignment. So we had 3 assignments like that, and a final assignment that completely killed me. We basically had to analyze 4 articles, and in each article we had to analyze the statistical tests that the authors used. Did they use them appropriately or did they not? What other tests could they have used? It was actually really a lot of work. I still don't have my mark as I'm filming this. It's been 3 weeks. I'm not sure what the holdup is. I have my other marks except for this one. I did well on the assignments, so I'm just waiting on this final assignment that's worth 40%. For statistics, there is a required textbook, but I personally didn't buy it. I had a friend lend it to me for the semester. So if you have friends that have gone through the NP program, I suggest to reach out to them because it really helped me. And of course, I used YouTube because I'm a very visual learner, especially when it comes to graphs and charts and all of this. I cannot read it from a textbook. I need to see it to be able to understand it better. That was basically my review of my first year classes in the NP program. If you have any other questions or comments, you could leave it down in the description box and I will answer them for you. You can also follow me on Instagram. I post more there, especially when it comes to my new job as a diabetes educator, which I'm in love with because it's really in line with what I want to do as a primary healthcare NP. You can also follow me on TikTok because I like making those videos as well. And that's basically it. I will see you in the next video.